What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. I have a problem, which I guess is a good thing because this wouldn't be much of a building update if there wasn't some kind of problem to solve. I need to figure out how to get a pillar to sit on the maintenance bridge at an angle, but still allow things to pass through it. I'm also going to build some stairs and a safety cage for the maintenance platform, which may not sound exciting, but trust me, it's going to be good. Anyways, don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. I'm going to start the week by tackling a tricky problem I have with the main bridge. As you know, one of its support pillars runs through the smaller bridge at a different angle than the floor of the bridge, but before I can go in and play with some angles, I need to tile off the bridge floor, and here I ran into another issue. Oh yeah, I got issues for days. I'm running low on dark bluish gray tile.
He's right.
I had a wealth of it after finishing my last mock Coruscant, but I sold some off and I've been using a bunch for the bridges, a lot more than I realized, and I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel much sooner than I anticipated. Granted, a bunch is currently being used for a secret project I'm working on, but this is definitely something I'm going to need to keep an eye on. I also need to continue the snow patch onto the second bridge section, but I'm not going to finish it until I know where exactly the bridge support pillar is going to sit because I want the snow to pile up against it. So the bridge support, at first glance, might not seem to be much of a problem, but I can't just build a pillar and plop it on the bridge, or else how are the minifigs going to get from one end to the other? So I'm going to build a little tunnel running through the pillar diagonally, so hopefully people can pop out on the other side and still be at the center of the bridge. I didn't want the tunnel to just be this blocky rectangular corridor, so I'm adding some 1x2x5 inverted slopes just to give it a little shape, looks, aesthetic, whatever you want to call it. I was sold on the idea and building away when I had a sudden and terrible realization. This whole thing is just not going to work. Now, before I dive in and explain the whole issue with the pillar and the tunnel, let's do something that's actually going to work out. Last week, I talked about adding some stairs and a safety cage so people can get down to the maintenance platform without dying. I built this cage out of flex tubes and droid arms, and I have this molded ladder piece, which is the perfect size for what I'm doing. It's not every day a specific molded Lego piece comes in handy like this for me. I added clips into the wall and secured the cage in place, creating a half circle around the stairs. A real simple but effective build. You may be wondering why not just say the door is an elevator that takes people down to the platform. Well, I could have done that, but let's be honest, this just looks so much cooler. When it comes to Lego mocks, sometimes the cool factor cannot be denied. So we got ourselves a good news and bad news situation here. Let's start with the good news. So the maintenance ladder and cage turned out spectacularly. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Honestly, maybe even a little bit better just because I didn't really know what exactly I was looking for, what to expect, but just perfect. A minifig fits in the cage on the ladder perfectly. And I don't know, it just looks very realistic. Obviously, these black arms are going to be swapped out for the more accurate dark bluish gray or light bluish gray arms, but you know, I can do that later. I'm also thinking about maybe adding more of the arms that hold the poles together, but that's all stuff that can, you know, that's all finishing touches stuff. The main prototype or design definitely turned out great. I like the stair pieces I'm using for a couple of reasons. First, like I already said, it's a very realistic looking, very compact, you know, just looks like a good ladder. But the second reason, and maybe the more important reason, is it's retractable. So one of the issues I was running into with the design is where to put the ladder, because if I put a ladder right here, it would obviously come down in front of the door and you can't get in the door. If I put it to the side, it would look kind of weird and there just wasn't enough space. So I knew it needed to be above the door, but didn't know how exactly to make that work till I came across these ladders and remembered they fit together and they can slide up and down. So now I have this perfect little retractable ladder. When the guys are climbing down, they can retract the ladder down. Then when they get down here onto the platform, they can just roll the ladder back up above the doorway. This thing came together like an absolute dream, honestly. Such a small, simple little build, but just perfectly executed. I mean, chef's kiss right here. I think my favorite aspect of this cage and ladder though is the contrast I was able to create with this and the rest of the build. Normally when you think of the word contrast, you think color, right? You think throwing in a patch of white snow to some dark bluish gray roads, or throwing in some dark red to make a tank pop. But in this case, I'm talking about piece contrast. So much of the bridge is brick, plate, and tile from the top to the pillars, but then you have this awesome, very technical looking staircase that just looks so different from the rest of it. Really makes it pop, and I think makes this whole thing look much more realistic. And then you've got the piping for the railing. This right here is a little tip for building. Try and go for more than just color contrast, but piece contrast as well. You know, dive into Technic work more with these flex pipes and droid arms, other things like that. Try and figure out ways to incorporate those types of things into your build instead of making everything brick built. That'll really help take your builds to the next level and make them look more realistic. I decided to stop the safety cage right here because I had it lower, but I didn't want it to turn into a safety issue where guys are coming in and don't notice and, you know, smack their head on the poles and damage their brains or something. So that's why it's so far up. Plus I figure, you know, by the time the dude's right here, I mean, he's like a little jump down to the ground, so I figured he's pretty much safe at that point. Moving on to the bad news. So I've got that section of the pillar that I was working on. While I was working on it, realized this whole design, everything I was doing, looks cool, works in theory, but the whole thing is just trash. It's garbage. It doesn't work because some of you guys may have realized this already, but I was a little slow to realize it for some reason. The pillar sits right here, right? And you can see that tunnel creates a perfect little opening through the pillar to allow you to get from one side of the bridge to the other. The only problem is it's a man bridge. There's nothing bigger than a man can get through there. So what is the point of having this massive bridge, giant tunnel entrance leading into the mountain if nothing bigger than a ice cream cart can make it through here? Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? It's not practical and just, it's gonna look weird. So that was very frustrating. And as of right now, I don't know what else I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to fix this problem. I obviously know something's gonna have to sit here, right? You're not gonna be able to fit a vehicle that's the size of this entire bridge through, and that's okay. I just maybe need something about the size of a Republic fighter tank to be able to get through. So I don't know what I'm gonna build. Maybe I thought about building 2 small little strips on either side and having like a larger tunnel, basically doing what I did here but blown up to a much larger size. That could work. However, that's going to make these side supports super skinny, like maybe that big, you know, 4 studs on each side, which means I'm gonna have a very thin support here holding up a potentially huge and very heavy bridge with minifigures and vehicles on it. So that could get a little sketchy there. I don't know, that's something I might have to tackle next week. Last thing I want to show you guys is all this rock work I got done. I have been going hard on the rock work, just grinding, trying to get it all done. I feel like I'm getting close. I think I'm probably gonna go to about right here. So you can see I'm really close. But unfortunately, the further you get this way, the lower the rock work is, which is ironic because this is where I started with the rock work. Like this was week 1. These were literally the first bricks of Megito were those ones right there. And it's now the lowest part of the rock work, but whatever. I've also been thinking about putting a droid armory right here, kind of like a hidden secret one underneath the surface of the city. So I'm gonna have these little elevators coming down that are gonna like transport droids up and down from the city surface down to the base below. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. Still, you know, kind of a rough idea, but I mean, I can't really work on it or build it right now, so I can at least think about it.
Oh yeah, it's that time again. After watching the glitz and glamour of the bridges and tunnel with their many lights, ladders, and details, we descend and resign ourselves to more rock work. It's here. It's boring, but it will not be ignored. I've also been trying to figure out my snow to rock work ratio. We know Megito is a real snowy place, but not Hoth levels of snowy, so how covered up should the rock wall be? This is the clearest look we get of the mountain, and I don't know about you guys, but this does not give me much to work with. As of right now, the snow looks too patchy in my opinion. I have these big sections, but then nothing in between or around them. So I might try adding in smaller bits of snow to the wall, like cheese slopes, 2x2 slopes, and this dope icicle technique to make the mountain look more snow laden. I've been so focused on big picture building, I forgot there's some touch-up work that needs to be done. The maintenance bridge has a gap in the retaining wall where the 2 bridge sections meet, and I need to add some slope panels to the sides of the wall to give it that nice rounded Camino platform look. This kind of stuff doesn't seem important, but if I forget, it can all pile up, and then the last few weeks of the series I'm slammed with all kinds of tedious touch-up work, so I want to knock it out as I go. I also need to add slopes to the top and bottom of this wall. I would really like to just do this as the bridge sections come together, but unfortunately, these sections require a stupid amount of these 2x2 slopes, regular and inverted, and they're kind of hard to get in bulk, so I just have to add them whenever I get a new shipment in. But you can see the end result is well worth the time and money because the slopes make the side of the bridge look so much better. The last thing we're going to talk about is the Tri-droid. Going up against Ki-Adi-Mundi and his UT-80s, we have these towering CIS Octopara Magna Tri-droids who are just as big as their names are long. These three-legged behemoths were seen in action in the Battle of Christophsis, and at first I thought they had pretty meager guns, but here Anakin uses the shots of one to destroy another. And this one no-scopes a UT-AT with one shot, so they're packing some serious heat for sure. I don't know exactly how big they are, but here's a clone trooper next to one, so you can see they're pretty massive, and I don't think I'm going to be able to go minifig scale when building these. There are at least 2 during the Battle of Megiddo, and I would like to include 2 in the mock. It just depends on how big and difficult to build they are. I really want to finish up my UT-AT this month so I can start designing and building one of these ASAP. As of right now, my plan is to just make it as big as possible to where it still looks good standing on the bridge. I'm going to include some of the smaller Tri-droids as well for variety and cannon fodder. The new clone battle pack coming out next year has a Tri-droid that could potentially work for me, so I'm excited to get my hands on one of those. I'm definitely hitting the rough point that comes in every mock series. It's usually a few months in, the excitement of a new project and new updates has worn off, and I'm not quite done with the foundations of the build yet, so there's still a lot of tedious building to do. I remember hitting this same point with Coruscant last year, around the same time of year even actually, which is kind of funny, but I pushed through it, and the second half of that series was my favorite of any series I've done to date. So I'm confident the same thing's going to happen with Megiddo. Next week, once again, I'm going to be working on that pillar on the bridge because I need to figure out how to get not just minifigs, but vehicles to be able to go through it. I also might be starting a section of the city. Who knows at this point, but that wraps up this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about everything down below in the comments, and I will catch you next time. But until then, happy building.